Father Pablo Migoni. I was born in Peru, and I grew up here in Augusta. And I've been a priest for the last 4 years. And I've been here in Augusta since July. And I did my seminary studies in Rome at the North American College, the Pontifical North American College, which is a seminary on Vatican property that is owned and operated by the U.S. bishops. I arrived in Rome in 2005, in August of 2005, just a few months after Pope Benedict had been elected Pope, and was there till 2009. So in my time in Rome, I was able to be present for a lot of Benedict's events, a lot of his first events. For example, the first gathering of cardinals, the first consistory, I was able to be present. I was able to participate at the Mass, to sing in the choir, to enter the Apostolic Palace where the cardinals are greeted. I was able to participate in many papal functions. I was never able to greet him, meet him personally or up close, but I was very, you're just involved. You hear about things, you meet people that work in the Vatican, that work in the, close to the Pope, in the different congregations, the different offices of the church. So you always hear, you always kind of, you feel the pulse of everything that's happening while you're there. Also being over there and being aware of the Pope's comings and goings and writings, you really get a sense that the church is something much greater than what we experience in our own local church. You know, the Catholic Church is something much greater than, Augusta, Georgia, or the state of Georgia, or even the United States. You know, the church does have a universality, and you experience that by the people you meet, the people you study with, but then also just because everyone goes to Rome, and the Pope is involved in all kinds of things. So that's something too that you gain from being there, from being close to the Pope, that sense of the church, of the universal church.
How you took the news that we're going to have probably for the first time in 600,000 years two Pope?
Mm-hmm. It was a surprise when I woke up Monday morning with the news. It was surprising, but at the same time, it wasn't a huge shock. And the reason why is that Pope Benedict had mentioned a few times during his papacy, and mentioned it publicly, that if he ever reached a moment in his papacy that he could no longer continue fulfilling his duties and he became physically unable to do what he needed to do, that he would resign. The times he mentioned it, everybody heard it, but nobody really thought he would actually do it. So that's why I say that it was surprising that it actually happened. As you say, it hasn't happened in centuries. But at the same time, with Benedict himself, Benedict in particular, it was not that shocking because he had, kind of insinuated or mentioned it. One of the times that he mentioned it was actually in an interview by a German journalist, Peter Seewald, and the issue came up in the interview, and he said very calmly, well, I'd retire. It has now taken...
How long was this? A few months ago?
Yeah, a few years. The book was published in 2010. And as some people say, the Pope being of a German background, very, very logical, very practical. The moment he realized that he could not keep going, or he could not meet all the demands of his position, he said, well, I'm out, let somebody else do it. A priest friend of mine said to me on Monday that if we had woken up to the news that Benedict had died, we would have been sad, but not shocked. But waking up to the news that he's retiring, we're both sad and shocked,
The most troubled thing for some theologian or people in the church is the fact that he's going to be living in the same sphere.
And he will continue to live within Vatican grounds. He's going to live in an older monastery that's in the Vatican Garden. So
you cannot deny there's going to be a strong influence from him.
Well, you never know. From what he has said, he has said that he's retiring to write, to pray, to be kind of. I think he wants to be in the background. He wants to kind of go into the shadows, I guess you can say, in a good sense of that. To not be on the spotlight anymore. I believe that he will be happy and content, just being at peace, reading, writing, and not having to deal with any more official functions. When he became Pope, he was known as somebody that was very calm, reserved, somewhat shy when it came to dealing with people. So where he's going now, he will feel more at ease and more at home than what he's been doing for the last 8 years. He will return to being Cardinal Ratzinger.
Ratzinger, it's really create a chilly effect in probably in the entire in South America and Central America, even Mexico. Because what it means, Cardinal Ratzinger.
With him personally, his theological thought has been interesting and has morphed and evolved and changed throughout the decades. Back in the 60s, when he was a professor of theology, he was involved with a lot of the student movements and all the things that were happening in the 60s. And he would write. He wrote essays and books and things that were with those times. With not necessarily per se liberation theology, but things that would be more in that wavelength. I've read that there was a protest at the university where he taught, and some of the students died, and that moment was a turning point for him, where he said, "Well, maybe this is not the direction I want to go," and he started to change his direction. Eventually, when he was made head of the Congregation of Doctrine and Faith, which I believe was in the early 80s, by John Paul II, there in part because of the position. You're the one in charge of keeping the faith intact, of not being distorted, of evaluating, of analyzing, of reading. What are theologians writing? What are they saying? And and eventually, coming down with a yay or nay. Whether yes, this is acceptable, no, this is not acceptable.
Because you may recall that he was called the El Inquisidor.
Right. And in a way, as head of the Congregation of Doctrine and Faith, that is the modern equivalent of the Great Inquisitor. The Congregation of Doctrine and Faith today, like if you look at it historically, used to be the Inquisition. They're the same kind of branch of the church. Granted, it's no longer, it doesn't function entirely
But at the beginning, it didn't start as an obscure organism inside the church. It was more like a practical or But then it came all the other stuff like killings and expedite killings.
Inquisition was usually used for more for political reasons, to keep a political uniformity in a kingdom. Because technically the church didn't kill him, even though there was a process, within the church. As head of the Congregation of Doctrine of Faith, that was his job, that was his position, to evaluate what was being taught, evaluate doctrine, teaching, whether or not it's congruent with what the church teaches, and that caused throughout his time there some tensions everywhere, Latin America and in Europe, with the different theologians, different ways of thought. But what is really remarkable, especially towards Latin America, is that when he became Pope, the first encyclical he published, which would have been in 2006, is called Christ is Love, Deus Caritas Est. And what he tried to do in this encyclical is to present how it is that the church takes care of the poor, how it is that the church takes care of the oppressed. And it's really an encyclical that surprised everyone, because the people that, you know, like the worries and thinking in Latin America, which theologically tends to focus more on the poor, on the oppressed, on liberation of the people, he kind of goes into that. So he surprised everybody. It has caused a lot of division, especially in Latin America. A lot of division within the church, unfortunately. And so he has tried to be a, some reconciliation, reconcile. I mean, personally, I think a lot of the fame he had when he became Pope is very aggressive, very, a lot of it came from the role he played, the position he had as head of the Congregation of Doctrine and Faith. Like, it goes beyond his personality. Like, it was his job. He had to do it. He had to call in people and say, you're doing this wrong. It's like, if you're the police chief, you might be a great guy, but your job is to follow the law. Whether you think somebody else is a nice guy or not, it's irrelevant if they're doing something that's against the law.
It's just very particular historic in this moment that he announced his resignation, Pope Benedict XVI, and he's supposed to appear in Brazil, where Father Bo was very
very influential
in the whole movement about the theology of liberation theology.
Rome and Latin America. The Pope did go. He went to Brazil a few years ago for the meeting of the Latin American Bishops' Conference, the CELAM, and it was in Aparecida. And it was very well chosen for him to go, because there you had all the Latin American bishops in Brazil, and the Pope went to be at the meeting. I personally, I have the book, but I haven't read the documents and everything that came out from Aparecida, just how you had farther back, the Medellin, Puebla, the gatherings of the CELAM in those countries that kind of gave the church in Latin America a particular, flavor or focus, But he went in part because he was aware that there's a lot of need for healing, a lot of need for kind of listening, and trying for the church to kind of get together and be able to be on the same step. But he went, and wherever Benedict has gone, he hasn't gone like to hit people on the head. It's always been very gentle. Like even when he was in England, that was right before I came back here, there was a lot of fear of how the trip was going to go. I mean, a lot of people in England made it known that they did not want him there. This was mostly a very secular, secular atheistic society. And he went, and there was absolutely nothing they could complain about with him, of the things he said. It was actually a very positive trip, even when he went to Turkey, very positive with the Turkish government, with the Orthodox. So whenever Benedict's gone places, he's always tried to bring a reconciliation, coming together. So he's done that. He did that when he went to Brazil. Now with World Youth Day coming up, he was elected Pope just a few months before World Youth Day was in Germany, in Cologne, in 2005. So I was thinking the other day, wouldn't that be funny? He was elected Pope before World Youth Day in Cologne. Now what if we get a Brazilian Pope a few months before World Youth Day at Rio, or at least a Latin American Pope? I mean, can it happen? I mean, it could. It could. Anybody could become Pope. You never know. Yet there is a reality that the Catholic Church is becoming more and more a religion of the southern hemisphere, Africa. Well, it's already Central South America, but mostly Africa. I think it'd be great if it was a Latin American pope. It would really give a push to the Catholic Church in Latin America in general, both from the littlest to the highest in the church. It would really be a boost for the church, and to connect the church in Latin America more with with Rome and everything. The ones that they talk about, there's 2 cardinals in Brazil, I think of Rio and Sao Paulo. Then the Cardinal of Tegucigalpa in Honduras. And there's one more. Because there's a few cardinals throughout Latin America. I think there's 12. All the cardinals right now that will elect the next pope, all of them were either appointed by Benedict or John Paul II. So and it's a way also for the church to not allow abrupt change. Because the church, if there's changes in the church, they come very slowly.
Are we talking about women in the priesthood and accepting gays as part of the church?
Right, of be allowed something like that will not change with the election of a pope, because it's something that's part of the church, of the teaching, that even the pope will not does not have the authority to change it. Maybe the next pope will want women to be priests. Maybe the next pope will allow to have same-sex unions blessed in the church. But it's not like a politician comes in, a new political party comes in with a different platform, and then they say, okay, this is what we're going to do now. It doesn't work that way at all, in that the next pope comes in, his role is to preserve what he has received. So no matter what cardinal becomes the next pope, we have there's no expectation that there will be a change in those things.
If John Paul II fought for Latin America the same way he fought for Poland,
for Eastern Europe,
we probably didn't have as much as dictatorship still running around in Latin America.
I think John Paul II, because of his personal experience growing under communism, he had a tremendous fear or great caution when it came to anything that even sounded of communism, anything that just had any resemblance or with communism. And that is part of the reason why I believe, not just me, but it's seen that he was very, he could have disagreed with dictators, but he wasn't going to put his favor, or get behind any type of rebels or any movements that were coming from a Marxist, or maybe not hardcore Marxist, but anything that even was near it. He wasn't gonna give his support to that. With Archbishop Romero, I know there was at one point John Paul II called Archbishop Romero from San Salvador to Rome to say, well, explain yourself. What is happening? What are you doing? Are you involved with leftists, with guerrilleros? Are you, and Romero was given a chance to kind of defend himself, and there was some conflict, there was some tension. Eventually, John Paul II, you can say, recanted some of the things he had said against Romero. So in Rome, Romero's reputation was completely cleared. So Romero had the full backing of the church, the full backing of the Pope. But Romero was not interested in politics, in the sense that he was interested in preaching the gospel, which cost him a lot of political enemies.
Porque aunque vea allí señales de sangre, de espinas, de escupidas, de polvo, de dolor, sé que son los pasos del amor que va dando el Señor, y que todo aquel que lo sigue no va siguiendo a un tirano, va siguiendo al Salvador, al verdadero Mesías. He recibido en esta semana acusaciones de los dos extremos, de la extrema derecha porque soy comunista y de la extrema izquierda porque ya me estoy haciendo de derecha. Yo no estoy ni de derecha ni de izquierda, estoy tratando de ser fiel a la palabra que el Señor me manda a predicar, al mensaje que no se puede alterar, al que a unos y a otros les dice lo bueno que hacen y las injusticias que cometen.
I think of Romero because I think he's like a symbol of a lot of these tensions that have happened and continue to happen in Latin America. I was actually in Guatemala about a month ago, and El Salvador, Guatemala, El Salvador, and we met with this priest. He's now 86, Monsignor Urioste, and he was the right-hand man of Romero, and he gave us a talk, and he had a very interesting point. He said that when Romero was appointed, he was so upset that he didn't go to Romero's installation because he didn't want Romero there. He saw Romero as too involved with the military, too involved with the government. But eventually this priest, Romero had to change, this priest had to change, and they worked together. And this priest said something interesting. He said, Jesus Christ, preached the gospel. Jesus Christ did not have political aspirations. Yet, when he was killed, the charges brought against him were political. Even though he did not have a political message, he was not involved. He didn't want to, get rid of the Romans or literally reestablish Israel as a kingdom, But the charges brought against him were political. The message of the gospel was interpreted and viewed by others as a political menace. And he compared that to Romero. He said Archbishop Romero was interested in preaching the gospel, but both sides saw it as political. The right saw it as political, so they hated him and killed him, and the left saw it as a political message, and they would take the things that that they liked and they would benefit from and use that in their favor. But at the end, Romero wasn't for one or the other. He was trying to preach. He was trying to preach the gospel. So the church is always careful then to make sure you preach the gospel. It's going to have consequences in society. But we're not primarily looking for political gain. Now, so once in a while you do find some individuals that would want to go after that, but the church in general does not recognize. Actually, now this changed not too long ago, maybe a few decades ago. If you're a priest, you are forbidden from holding any type of political office. If you do, you're
well, a section given to Senor Lugo.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, even though he retired, they were good under John Paul II, but they have continued to improve under Benedict. Relationships with the Jewish organizations has improved, despite the fact of what oftentimes you might hear of the Pope and this and that. But things have improved. The Pope created a whole new structure within the church to bring in Anglicans and Episcopalians into the Catholic Church, while allowing them to retain their own liturgical practices, retain their own structures, retain many of their own disciplines, but being allowed to come in under Rome. So which that was, you know, groundbreaking. That's never been done before. So he has tried to reconcile. He has also tried to reconcile with some of the very more conservative factions in the church, like the Pius XII Society is one of them. That they, after the Second Vatican Council, Archbishop Lefebvre from France said, you know, I don't recognize the Second Vatican Council. And this society is very large throughout the world. And Benedict has tried a lot to kind of try to bring them back. So he's worked in all directions, always trying to bring a cohesion, trying to bring some more unity within the church.
Our question is how we're going to deal with these two popes. How we're going to change the teaching in the sense that we have only one representation of Jesus. Now we have two.
I truly believe, from reading things that Benedict has written, from having listened to him quite a lot, just the way he says, I have the sense that he really will just kind of fade into the background, that he has no interest in remaining involved and remaining with a little, you know, keep something in there to still have a certain control or influence. And the church will make it very clear that, you know, the new pope is the pope, whoever is elected pope, and that and Cardinal Ratzinger is Cardinal Ratzinger. You know, chances of being from Latin America or Africa are probably about the same. More than likely, it'll be European. But I mean, you never know. Even when Pope John Paul II was elected, it was a big surprise. You know, you had a young Polish cardinal. You know, that nobody, even though people knew he was very highly educated and you know, very intelligent and very already kind of influential in the church, nobody really thought he'd become the next pope. So we may have another one of those big surprises. Because when John Paul II died, it was kind of saying, well, you know, Ratzinger was a very, very likely candidate to succeed him. But right now, you know, there's a few, but there's really no sense of, you know, well, here's the short list. So the short list is actually pretty long, you know. So it could go in all kinds of different directions. John Paul II expanded the College of Cardinals. If you look at the cardinals and where they come from, kind of by year, or, you know, I saw a chart just the other day, I think every 10 years of the 20th century. It's amazing to see. At the beginning, it's almost all European, and of those, over half of them Italian. Whereas right now, you have not most, but the largest percentage is European. But you have, I think it's 12 Americans. You have 14 or 15 from Latin America. You've got several from Asia, from Africa. And that's something that John Paul II actively did to try to, you know, because the church is not, I mean, the Catholic Church is not right now a European, you know, white European religion. It is no longer that. It's really you know, something much greater.
Y en algo me entristece mi ministerio es el rechazo que se le da muchas veces, como si yo quisiera hacerles el mal y no el bien. Solo me consuela que Cristo también, que quiso comunicar esta gran verdad, también fue incomprendido y lo llamaron revoltoso y lo sentenciaron a muerte, como me han amenazado a mí en estos días.